Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Coastal Feuds podcast. After a delayed break, the gang is finally back. We're excited to have you here. I'm Braden Plord alongside Charlie Van Dyke, Arjun Pirani, and Tyler Lombardi. Holy cow, I forgot your last name. It's just been a little while, and lots of sport news recently. The NFL Draft Combine wrapping up today. I think a lot of big stories. This has been one of the most athletic groups overall that we've seen, and I know we all have some prospects that we all love. So is there anyone that just wants to start out and just say which prospect or two really sticks out for them?
I can start here, and for me, it was the top two tight ends, Eli Stowers and Kenyon Sadiq. Both of them were athletically at the top of the position, far and away, and then talentedly, they're also both at the top of their position, far and away. And they looked incredibly impressive. They both honestly could even play like as a receiver, but the athleticism that both of them have, their jumping ability, their outright speed, their size, it's really impressive, and I'm looking forward for both of them. They both look like they could be huge prospects.
Yeah, I mean, my guy is Taylon Green. I feel like the media's picked up on him a lot after his combine performance. He posted a 4.41 40, which is insane. The previous best before that was Robert Griffin. And then before that, he had a 40-inch vertical, and then he had a 10-foot broad jump. So he's just freaking nature. And we were talking about it before we started. We kind of talked about how he could be the next Taysom Hill in New Orleans. So I think that kid's pretty interesting, and to see how the mocks and all these experts see him rising and maybe even inching himself into the first or later rounds.
Yeah, for me, uh, I don't necessarily think his combine performance showed what he was really capable of. But for me, one person I really liked going into the draft was Caden Weegan. If you took any look at his film when running at Iowa, either returning the punt, which what he was phenomenal at, or just being a simple wide receiver, I think he still was a phenomenal player overall. I still think he'll be able to find a lot of success within the NFL. I don't think the combine really I would say reflected how well he could actually play. And I think that goes for the combine as a whole. I don't think the combine really is the best measure of what players can really play like at their best or like within a game or really perform to a level that teams need to win. But I still really like Caden Winston going into the draft.
So I think I have two players that I really liked from this draft, one on offense and one on defense. I'll start with the one on offense. I have Wake Forest running back Damon Claiborne. He's a little bit on the undersized spectrum, 5'10", 188, but going into this, he had a really high fast 40 of 4.37. He looked extremely shifty on those on-field drills. I mean, going into this, we know that Claiborne was extremely agile in his time at Wake Forest, and I think that's going to be a useful gadget for NFL offenses and how they can use him with that speed and agility. Plus, he has some experience returning punts and kicks through college. So I think just in retrospect, using him in multiple different gadget type ways, I think is really going to help him. And he had a little bit of production. I think that's the thing that's really dampening him, and that's why I think I'll go about day two. He had over 1,000 scrimmage yards and 10 touchdowns in back-to-back seasons. I think Claiborne can really help an NFL team give some juice to an offense. Now, on the defensive side, I really liked Oregon safety Dylan Thieneman. I mean, going in, you were expecting a really impressive performance, and he sure put that up. 6 feet, 201 pounds, running a 4.35 40, 41-inch vertical. He had great production in his time at Purdue and Oregon, over 300 tackles in a college in 3 seasons, which I think is just absolutely absurd. 8 interceptions as well. And when you think about Oregon defensive backs, you think about guys like Javon Holland and Christian Gonzalez having a lot of success early on. I think Thieneman really secured a spot in the first round. I think he will have similar success to the former Oregon defensive backs that have come before him. Now, Arjun, you mentioned earlier Taylon Green as your riser. I kind of see him as an Anthony Richardson type build. Where do you see him going, and what team do you want to see him at?
I mean, yeah, I kind of prefaced it before. He's definitely Anthony Richardson-esque, except he has a lot more tape than Anthony Richardson did coming out of college. Richardson started 1 year at Florida. Taylor Green started two, if I'm mistaken, at Arkansas. So there's a lot more film on there, and you can actually see his mechanics. Um, and he's not only just an athletic freak, he's been proven to play in the SEC against competent opponents. And do I think that'll translate directly to the NFL? Do I think he'll become a day one starter? Absolutely not. I think this is very much so a stash guy, maybe like a Jalen Milroe for last year, for all you Seahawks fans out there. But I definitely see him going to a team that already has a solidified quarterback, like perhaps the Rams with a Matthew Stafford, who he can kind of take some time in the backseat and kind of learn under the vision of a veteran quarterback. Maybe even a Pittsburgh, if that's a little bit of a reach, maybe even a Pittsburgh or a Tampa Bay under the guidance of Baker, something along those lines where he has like at least a couple of years to develop until his contract is up.
I think I really agree with you. That's actually what I had written down. I think that Taylon Green, like day two type guy, I think if he goes to the Rams, I think that's his best opportunity. I could see him having a Jordan Love type development where you got an MVP quarterback, veteran guy, one of the best players in the league, Matthew Stafford there that can really mentor him for a couple of seasons, build him up, as well as having another offensive mastermind, Sean McVay. So I see a lot of similarities between Love and Green, both like height, maybe not so much play style, but I think Green can be a he's a great prospect. I just think he's just a raw talent and he needs to have some stuff honed in. Now, I kind of want to ask this question for the group. When you look at the draft, you're always going to see these guys that really just jump off. Every year, there's always one or two guys that have an insane combine and then they just shoot up the draft boards, or guys that are super athletic but maybe didn't have that production in college. Do you guys trust more how people perform in the combine or how they did on their game tape? Or is it kind of a mix of both?
I personally would always put it at a mix of both because, like, as much as you can't measure someone's game from the combine, you can just get a gist of how athletic they are. It is just a baseline thing for athleticism, which is always important in a player, but game film is the best of what they're going to do in game for you. But the reason I'm not full on game film is that it can be deceiving with certain players. Like certain players might work well in a certain offense or in a certain scheme, and that won't translate to certain schemes in the NFL. So that's why I feel like game film can be a little deceptive, but it's a mix of both. I would weigh more heavily towards the game film though.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I feel like it's a mix of both, obviously. But I feel like the people who rely heavily on the combine, think back a couple of years, first overall pick Trayvon Walker he was being scouted as a late first round kind of a guy, or maybe mid first round guy. He had an outstanding combine, shot all the way up to the first overall pick, out jumping Aiden Hutchinson, and has had I don't want to call it a bust-worthy career, but an underwhelming career, to the likes of the person following him in Aiden Hutchinson. But then there's also been other people, which I'm drawing a blank on it, who was a combine athletic freak that's actually turned out to be pretty good. But I feel like it's a mix of both, like Tyler said, and yeah, I feel like you just gotta put both into consideration.
Yeah, definitely no debate here. I think it's 100% a mix of both. I think both elements really have their positives and their negatives. When watching game film, I really think I really think you have to put the player you're watching within the context of their team. I always like to say, mid-major teams know how to win games. Or mid-major quarterbacks know how to win games because you look at a player like Josh Allen. He came from Wyoming. He didn't have any He didn't have any offers coming out of high school. He's emailing around. He goes and plays JUCO, and with limited weapons on that Wyoming team, he was still able to come out and be an absolutely dominant NFL quarterback, as we've seen. And so I think watching game film, you really have to look all the way around, and you also have to look at the context in which they're playing in. Do they have incredible? If they're a quarterback, do they have incredible wide receivers? Do they have an incredible line behind? Do they have an incredible line in front of them? I like to think of Bryce Young right now on the Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young, he goes to Alabama, one of the most phenomenal teams in college football right now, really of all time. And so, when given all the tools around him, he's obviously going to be a very successful quarterback. But when you're not given all the same tools, when you're playing at a higher level like in the NFL, and he doesn't find that same success, do you really blame that more on Bryce Young, or do you blame that more on the position that he was developed in?
Now, a second question regarding the combine. I know that recently it's become more normal for some people to sit out of drills. For example, Jordan Tyson hasn't ran the 40. Fernando Mendoza didn't do any of the throwing drills. We have elite level guys that are sitting out of the combine. What are your guys' thoughts about that, especially to players that maybe weren't invited to the combine that would have wanted to do those drills and put their name out there?
Um, to the point of sitting out, I don't necessarily like dislike the sitting out part. It's like with this Fernando Mendoza, his game is shown in the film. It's his ability to read defenses. It's his ability to be the signal caller. It's not his ability to run really fast and jump really high. And you've seen injuries at the combine, and I forget who it was last year, but somebody hurt their knee running the 40-yard dash because they were trying to push themselves to jump higher and in the draft. And I feel like Fernando Mendoza not throwing and not running and not jumping, it's just he's okay with where he is. He doesn't feel like he needs to do more, and that's fine. I think to the point of what about the people that aren't invited? There's always pro day events, and pro day events, while they're a little bit less accurate, they give the exact same tests, the exact same athleticism tests that you get at the combine. So I feel like it's not really taking away from anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it definitely depends on the situation, but almost all the time, it's just to preserve your draft stock. I mean, you look at Makai Lemon and the wide receiver from USC. He didn't run the 40 because he's not known for being fast. He's known for being a JSN kind of route technician kind of player, and that's just the way he is and the way he plays the game. But in like the aspect of Fernando Mendoza, right now you're the unanimous number one overall pick. You have teams telling you to get arrested so that you can slide in the draft to them. So why would you do anything to jeopardize your stock when you're basically throwing to receivers that you have no connection with? You have no idea when they break in their routes, how they run their routes. So why would you not just keep that to your pro day and a controlled environment that you're aware of and the staff you're aware of and the receivers that you're aware of? It makes you look better, it makes them look better. And in all honesty, that's the issue with the combine, is that the combine, especially for the offensive playmakers, so to speak, and the wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks, they're sitting out of the catching and passing drills because they're not in a controlled environment and they don't want to do anything to jeopardize their draft projection and they're just stock overall.
Brady ran a 5-second 40. He then went on to win however many Super Bowls that he did. I'm already forgetting the number. Seven.
Seven.
There it is. No, the combine is not a totally accurate reflection, and I think players understand that. And so why have a negative reflection upon you about something that might not really influence your game that much? If someone's going to sit out of the 40-yard dash because they know they can't run that fast, but if they don't need to run that fast and still be a great player, they're not going to tank their draft stock just to show here are my weaknesses. They don't want to show that to the teams. There's no positive for them in that.
All right, now I know that as fans ourselves, we always have one player that we always want to go after. So I want to kind of go round robin once again and maybe say one or two players. I know Tyler and Arjun's team both have 2 first rounders. So I kind of want to just go around and say what player you want your team to target and why. I will start. I am a Chiefs fan. So sitting at the number 9 pick, my biggest hope is to get Notre Dame running back Jeremiah Love. The Chiefs have had no run game whatsoever for the past couple of years. It's been purely reliant on Patrick Mahomes and the passing game. Pacheco has been a nice plug-in guy, but he's never been that back that you just want to give to 25, 30 times a game. Jeremiah Love is all that and more. Athletic freak, running a 4.36, really helping his draft stock. We saw so much production at Notre Dame, his athleticism. I think that he would be a great component and piece to an Andy Reid offense.
As a Jets fan, I have the 2 and the 16 picks. Looking just at the best available for the number 2 overall pick, there's not really like the super valuable thing that you would want to see as a Jets fan. And there's just so many holes in the shipwreck of a team that I would honestly love to see them trade that pick and just get more. But if they're picking somebody, I like David Bailey out of Texas Tech, the edge. He's good for that position. The Jets had 0 pass rush last year, traded away Quinnen Williams, the D tackle, and they're going to need pressure. And then at the 16, I feel like getting someone to complement Garrett Wilson would be very helpful. So if Jordan Tyson is still available at the 16, I love Jordan Tyson. But even if he's not, there's a good chance that somebody like Carnell Tate or even Makai Lemon is still available at 16. If either of them are there, I have no problem with them as receivers. They're both excellent receivers. So if the Jets can get someone to complement Garrett Wilson, that's ideal.
Yeah, I mean, for me, for my Cowboys, we have the 12th and the 20th pick. And much the same with Tyler and what he just said. My number one prospect on the board is Caleb Downs, because last year in free agency, we let Jordan Lewis, our nickel, walk, who is our safety and also our nickel cornerback. So, and obviously, if you watch the Cowboys this year, you know it was high scoring and zero defense. And it was an absolute slaughter for opposing quarterbacks in the passing game. So I think that Caleb Downs will not only help with the run, but also in the skies, as you showed, he's really good with play rec. But if he's not there, I think he should trade down into the latter half of the second round, into the early second round, and just accumulate picks. But for the 20th pick, I really like Avion Terrell out of Clemson. He can play both inside and outside, which I think is really helpful for us, especially because we also let go of Trayvon Diggs. So our only good quarterbacks right now are basically Deron Bland and no one really else, which is kind of sad to say out loud, but that's the hard reality. So I think Jerry's gonna need to target those guys, and I think Shotty's gonna have to make some tough calls and when to trade down, and I think we'll be able to figure something out.
Yeah, I definitely say as a Niners fan, probably just trade for a doctor. Maybe a really good, we'll trade up for a doctor. Maybe a really good athletic trainer. Keep the boys in the locker room healthy. No, although on a real note, I do feel like the Niners have the talent. They have the talent. They have the personnel to go win a Super Bowl right now. But I mean, as we've seen over the past however many seasons, it's really just about staying healthy for these guys. But that being said, I think if he were still on the board, Makai Lemon at SC. I mean, I hate to love an SC guy, but I do think he looks really strong playing in Southern California. And then, I mean, if he is drafted before that, because the Niners have like 26th or 27th pick, somewhere around that. Denzel Boston out of Washington. I like keeping a guy on the West Coast. And I also did think I really did think he played well in the Big Ten this year.
Just a quick side note, Charlie. Do you believe the whole what's the thing?
Yeah, I like I don't know exactly what it is, but like the facility that's next to the Niners training facility.
Yeah, it's like
that
this
is like
weird plant.
Electrical substation thingy.
Yeah, the electrical substation. I would say that the research behind it does look actually possibly promising, but the thing is, I'm also not a doctor, so I can't tell you. I don't fully know. If it is true, I think that's completely on ownership for not doing their research into placing the practice facility. But at the same time, I also think a lot of fans just want an excuse for why their team kind of sucks right now. I'm not saying we suck that much, but I'm also saying it's really hard to go through a season seeing that many players get injured and hurt, and some people need a coping mechanism. But I would like ownership to take like a real hard dive investigation into it. I think I think they have said that they will. But I would like them to take a real good hard look into whether it's true or not, because I believe there might be some validity to it, and at the same time, people just want an excuse. But there might be something there. There really might be.
All right, final debate before we wrap up this episode. Fernando Mendoza. In every mock draft, he's the number one pick going off to the Raiders. We mentioned earlier, didn't work out in the combine. Will Fernando Mendoza be a star or a bust? I know we all have different strong feelings about it. So, Arjun, I would like you to start on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, Fernando Mendoza, watching him in the Big Ten this whole year, I know Charlie has some thoughts about this, but I just kind of think he's a system-esque quarterback. I'm not a big fan of his play style, the way he plays at all. He has a great personality, don't get me wrong, but his mechanics are a little bit iffy in my book. I think he says, Tyler even said it before we started, that he runs an RPO offense. To me, he draws comparisons to Kenny Pickett of the quarterback classes a couple of years ago, and his sneaky speed and athleticism, and also his arm talent. But I think the Indiana run has really put him in the limelight, and I think he's getting a lot more attention than maybe other prospects in the draft deserve. Cade Klubnik. So that's just my 2 cents. But I really don't think he's all that, so to speak.
I mean, you mentioned what I said, but I just didn't like the fact that he was in what Braden mentioned earlier, like that perfect scenario in college. He has this amazing offensive line. He has elite receivers around him, and he's in this RPO offense that allows him to make very simple one look reads. It's either hand it off or throw it to the first guy you see. And he had the luxury of time. He had the luxury of his receivers being open, and he had the luxury of a very competent head coach. And he's going into a not so good scenario in Vegas where he's not going to have the talent around him. I don't know how that RPO scheme is going to translate. I feel like it's not always translated in the past. The difficulty of reading an NFL defense is a very real thing for a lot of quarterbacks, and I just don't think he'll be able to replicate what he did at Indiana with the Raiders.
Yeah, I would actually probably say I wholeheartedly disagree. I 100% agree in the idea that he probably had a lot of luxuries around him, but I do think there is a difference between calling someone purely just assistant quarterback and a good quarterback being around a lot of good players. I would say Fernando Mendoza, at least from my eye test, I do think that there is a lot of validity to him. I do think he has what it takes to be a really great quarterback in the NFL. I do think it's going to take a couple of years for an adjustment to be made. I think like a lot of quarterbacks, we expect them to be, perfect Tom Brady right out of the draft. It's probably not going to turn out like that exactly, but I do think that Fernando Mendoza will have success in the NFL within the next 3 to 5 years, in which the Raiders will be really happy with the fact that they took him. I don't think he'll be a bust in any way. I think working under the Cignetti offense has actually taught him more about how to be a good quarterback, how to be a leader, and I think that there is a lot within Fernando Mendoza that really shows why he will have success.
All right, that will wrap up another episode of the Coastal Feuds podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Braden Plord, Charlie Van Dyke, Arjun Pirani, and Tyler Lombardi. Wishing you guys a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.